to Street Speed 717, where today we are doing an old school vlog just in the car talking. I haven't done one of these in months, and the reason why I'm going to do one today is because I just want to have a little talk about the new show, The Grand Tour, on Amazon Prime, starring Jeremy Clarkson, James May, and Richard Hammond. Now, I've made videos on this subject in the past. Well, not really this subject, but when the whole Top Gear debacle first came about. And let's start with this. Top Gear is a show for me that I think I saw my first episode when I was 13 or 14, so kind of starting to become an adult, but really as I was getting into cars a little bit later in life. And Top Gear was something that fueled that passion. You know, normal people talk about, I don't know, what show do people watch these days? I honestly have no fucking clue. It's Orange is the New Black. Everyone says, oh, did you see the new episode of Orange is the New Black last night? Well, car people are saying, hey, did you see the new episode of Top Gear last night? That's the big thing that everyone cares about if you are a fan of cars. And actually, this is a pretty incredible fact. I believe Top Gear was the most watched informational program or factual program, whatever they called it. I believe it was the most watched in the world at one point, like of all TV shows on any subject matter, which is pretty incredible when you think that, yes, you know, there are millions of car fans across the globe, but we're still very much a minority. You know, most people don't give a shit about cars. So anybody with access to internet, which I saw an interesting article on this actually recently, where the fact that Top Gear was pirated so much made it popular across the world, but that's a subject for a different vlog. The point is that everybody who loved cars loved Top Gear. It was just the show. And it went on for 22 seasons. I saw my first episode, like I said, when I was 13 or 14. It was the Bolivia special, which many people maintain to this day, including myself, that it was the best episode ever, and I was hooked ever since. So it went on for 22 seasons, I believe, or 21 seasons, and then there was an incident where Jeremy Clarkson, who was the star of the show, you know, all three of them were stars, but Jeremy was really kind of the ringleader, so to speak. And he got in an argument with the producer. They were drinking after a show, and there were obviously alcohols involved, so things can happen. And he punched this producer from the BBC in the face. And when I made my first vlog on this subject, I always felt like the BBC was blowing that out of proportion. Now, yes, I will say that, you know, it is not appropriate to punch somebody in the face that you disagree with, especially if it's essentially, you know, I guess in some way your boss. Obviously, that's not a good thing. Now, knowing Jeremy, that doesn't really surprise me that much. And, you know, part of it for me, I felt like Jeremy was on thin ice with them for a while. You know, very much, the BBC is very much an organization that cares about being super PC, in other words, politically correct. You can't say, you know, anything even remotely like offensive, because God forbid anybody gets offended these days. I do see where they're coming from, because the BBC is funded by, from what I understand, tax money over there. So it's kind of like, you know, they can't really afford to be. It's not like a TV show in America where it's privately funded and it's paid for by advertisers, and they can choose to pull their ads or not, so they can say whatever they want. In that situation, it's literally paid for in some way, or at least in some small amount, by the citizens. So you really can't be saying, you know, things. And Jeremy was a guy who was always saying whatever he felt at the time, and sometimes that was offensive to some people. So he was on thin ice with them for a while, and this was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak. He ended up getting fired, and I was not happy about that. And I knew back then, like a lot of people had guessed, that if they were going to fire him, which they did, that there was no way Richard and James were going to continue making the show without him. There's no way. And sure enough, a couple months later, they said, hey, you know, we're not going to do the show either. So the greatest program ever, Top Gear, was ruined by this event, and in my opinion was ruined by the BBC and their reckless decision making. That's my opinion. Some people will disagree. You can't mold the chemistry that those three had. You know, when the new show came out, not the Grand Tour, the new season of Top Gear, they replaced all three of them, obviously, because they weren't doing the show anymore. And it was awful. They had Matt LeBlanc, Chris Harris, I believe, either Chris Harris or Chris Evans. I can never remember. I always get them mixed up. And I believe actually both of them were on the show in some small way. But I don't know. But either way, it was awful. And it was the first episode. I went into it with an open mind. I did. Again, I said this in the other video. You know, I really tried. Now, you go into it with an open mind, but because it's not what you're used to, obviously it's going to be very hard for that show to impress you. You know, if it's not the old Top Gear, it's going to be very hard for that show to impress anybody. But honestly, I did go into it with an open mind. I thought that it would be entertaining. I knew that the cars were going to be great. Obviously, they have access to great cars. I knew that the camera work was going to be good. The editing was going to be good. So I thought, maybe this would still be enjoyable, but it was not. The one guy, the redheaded guy, Chris, whatever, he was just like way too artificially high energy and was ridiculous. It's just annoying. Even his voice is kind of annoying. And then Matt LeBlanc, who is an American, if you don't know, who I like in a lot of situations and a lot of shows that I've seen him in, and I liked him as a guest on the old Top Gear, I felt like he was too low energy. It was just like, it was almost like he didn't even want to be there. And then later on, they brought in some other people, Sabrine Schmidt, who is a German race car driver. I was kind of neutral on her. She didn't really talk that much, so I don't know. She was driving a Z06, and she said how it was a piece of shit, and I'm driving a Z06 in yellow as well. If you've never seen any of my videos before, don't follow the channel. So for me to say that I didn't mind her that much, you know that I'm not being biased. She said that this car was a piece of shit, which is fine. That's her opinion. I didn't mind her that much. Kind of hard to understand what she's saying sometimes. That's obviously not her fault. They brought in another guy who was reviewing a Tesla. Wasn't a big fan of him either. Again, the lines felt too rehearsed and like the same shit you hear every day. It's like they were reading off of a magazine article like Car and Driver about a car. It wasn't, you could almost tell that they're not even like really car people. That's kind of how I felt. And a lot of people said, oh, give it some time, the chemistry will build a little bit. But like I said a little while ago, just not too long ago here in the car, you can build chemistry to a point. If you put people together, eventually they'll start to kind of mesh a little bit, but you can't build the chemistry that those three had. Some people just worked, and those three were friends outside of the show, which a lot of people don't know. They were like literally best friends, which is why it was so entertaining. I could watch the three of them in a room together just talking about donuts, and I would probably be entertained because they were just genuinely funny and they had such a good chemistry, and that's something that you can't replace. I gave the show a shot. Like I said, I watched it for about 3 episodes and then I quit because I was like, all right, this show sucks. And I think a lot of people kind of felt the same way because the ratings for the first show were pretty good, and then the second one was not too good, maybe a little bit worse, and by the third show their ratings were just tanking like a boat anchor. It was bad. And I've seen multiple articles from people higher up in the BBC and everything like, oh, this is bad, maybe we made a mistake. And to me, I'm laughing the whole time. And I think a lot of people are too, because it's like, hey, you made your bed, now you lie in it. So fuck them. And now let's talk about the Grand Tour. Now, Amazon Prime is a paid subscription service, which I recommend that you buy. If you support the show, please buy it and support them. It might not seem like they need money, but it costs a ton of money to make these episodes. It does. It really does. So your subscription really helps. I have a subscription. Most people I know do. Now, it is available online. Maybe if you can't afford it and you want to watch it, it is available. In fact, there's even a full, I looked it up just, I was curious, there's a full episode actually available on YouTube. Now, it's, the voices are slowed down and it's like in a small window so that it makes it harder to be detected by whatever copyright algorithms Amazon is going to use to try to find, like all these people do for songs or whatever, what all these companies do. So it is available, but I do recommend that you buy it. Like I said, show your support. It's a good thing, and it's definitely worth it. There's no doubt about that. So when you first start watching the show, there's a little intro with them addressing a crowd. And the cool thing about it is that it's very familiar to anybody who watched Top Gear. The format is very much the same. They go out and they do their thing with the cars, and then they come back and they talk in the studio, and they're around kind of a coffee table, and then they address, there's a live audience just like before. So it's very similar. If you watch the old Top Gear, you're going to get into this new one very easily, which I was surprised by. I thought that maybe they would switch it up a little bit, but it was a nice surprise, because when I saw that it's very much a similar format, like I said, it's very familiar, it's easy to get back into, and the show is easy to get into for a number of reasons, mainly because it's great. But I do like the format very much.
I really liked it. It felt like I was watching the old school Top Gear. And I liked that there was very little censorship.
Yeah.
So that was, and it was nice to have kind of the big three, the hyper car shootout that BBC never could really pull off.
Yep, they could never pull it off. I was just going to say, The new episode is about, obviously, the Porsche 918, McLaren P1, and the LaFerrari.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was, the opening was just badass. It was just, and I think it'll get better. There's some, obviously some tweaks and stuff they have to work out, but it was phenomenal. There's Top Gear screwed
Troy's not a fan of the old Top Gear either. Well, what became of the old Top Gear? It fucking sucks.
Yeah, it was not. It was Chris. I like Chris Harris, but Chris Evans kind of ruined it. And I think he put a bad taste in everybody's mouth. So there's not much to come back from, and Amazon just is pretty much giving them the big middle finger now at this point.
Do you have a message for anybody in the vlog?
Mike rides a bike without a seat.
That's true.
And that's it.
That's my buddy Troy. He has a McLaren MP.
You could just call it, people call him the 12C.
I forgot what it's called.
McDonald's.
Anyway, he has a McDonald's MP12-4C. And
MP4-12.
And I'll put his channel link in the description if you want to hear more of what he has to say. But anyway, I thought that'd be funny. So I'll see you later, buddy.
See ya, man.
Later.
Take it easy, guys. Bye.
But yeah, anyway, the new show is with the Porsche 918, the McLaren P1, and the Ferrari LaFerrari. And they did a comparison, the holy trinity of cars, as everyone likes to call it. And they did a comparison of which car they felt was the best, which one was the fastest around the track. And it was great. You know, the show, I won't spoil the results, obviously, but the show is fantastic. You're definitely going to love it. It's one of those rare instances in life where, one of those rare occurrences where something actually lives up to your expectations, which is a tall order when you think about it. You know, the old Top Gear, the new season of the old Top Gear comes out, everyone hates it, and then everybody gets wind of this new show, the Grand Tour, and everyone's like, oh, this show's gonna be our new Lord and Savior, finally. So that's a lot to live up to when there's so much hype behind it, and when it comes out and you watch it and you're like, wow, that's everything that I want it to be. You know, that's a pretty incredible feat to pull off, and they definitely pulled it off. You're gonna love the show if you watch it, and that's basically all I wanted to say. With all that being said, I sincerely hope that you enjoyed this video, this old style vlog. If you're stopping in for the first time, please subscribe. Take care. Have a great day.